Hey, and welcome to the Evidence-Based Pilates podcast. We have an awesome topic in store today in which we are going to discuss the importance of knowing and meeting activity guidelines. Okay, this is one of my favorite topics to talk about because it is not widely prevalent in the Pilates community, and it's very high value. So it's something that I feel like I can help the community with, and I encourage you to do the same. So even if you're familiar with activity guidelines, it's always nice to have a reminder, and it's always nice to talk a little bit deeper in terms of the reasoning. And if you're unfamiliar with activity guidelines, this is going to be a conversation well worth your time because you can make a significant difference in the lives of your clients as well as colleagues that work with other clients as well. So physical activity guidelines, I'm going to utilize the American College of Sports Medicine's guidelines, which are consistent with guidelines around the world. Physical activity guidelines are guidelines that are recommended through various organizations to in terms of like how much exercise someone needs to get per week. And the reason behind that is so you live longer. It's like how much exercise do you need where we can be confident that you'll live longer, meaning that you'll reduce your all-cause mortality. And the physical activity guidelines that are recommended from the ACSM, right? I'm going to say ACSM for now on because American College of Sports Medicine is too hard to say. ACSM. So it's 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise plus 2 resistance training sessions per week. Or you could just do it faster. You could do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise plus 2 resistance training sessions per week. So you have 2 options, right? You can just like run slower and do 150 minutes of moderate intensity, or you could run faster and do 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. But either way, you need to do 2 resistance training sessions per week. So like those are nice, right? But like what does that actually mean? Right? Like how do we measure intensity of exercise? There's different ways to do it. The easiest way that I would say in terms of like applying this in the studio and also with your clients outside of the studio is through what's called the talk test. You're already doing the talk test, which is great. Like you're already doing it, and then we may just enhance like your reasoning behind it, like reading in between the lines. So the talk test, the way you do the test is you just talk to your client, which is why you're already doing it. And when you're talking to your client, like if your client can easily talk to you, right? Like kind of like how I'm talking to you right now, this would be considered low intensity, right? So like most of Pilates, like it actually is low intensity. Even like I'm not trying to offend you, right? Or me. Like I love Pilates. Don't tell me Pilates is low intensity, but it is a lot of times. Like it's hard, but cardiovascularly, it's actually not that demanding relative to other exercises. If I've offended you, like hear me out. Okay, I'm not here to offend anyone. I'm just here to think of ideas, right? And like how can we help as many people as possible? So the reason why I say that is that like footwork, for example, is like gossip. It can be gossip time, right? It could be like I'm homing in on your big toe, right? But it's a lot of times it is like gossip time, tell me about your neighbor kind of thing. And when a client, like let's say that is the case, right? They're talking, it's really easy to talk during footwork. It's really easy to talk during short box. It's really easy to talk during pulling straps, right? Like you're able to get the words out. Your muscles probably burning, I get it, especially we're gonna add pulses. Yes, it's burning, but that's not cardiovascular fitness, right? So the way we're measuring intensity is on aerobic capacity or cardiovascular fitness, right? We're trying to get people breathy, which is independent of burning, right? So if we were to do a moderate intensity, right, that's like I'm my cardiovascular system's going, so you hear me breathing, like, but you can still talk, right? It's just more labored. Like your breathing is more labored. You can get full sentences out. It's just more effortful, right? But you can still talk. Whereas vigorous intensity exercise is like you just went sprinting and you're gassed. Like you're on a treadmill, you sprinted for 60 seconds. That's ridiculous. And you just like can't talk for like 30 seconds or however long, or during that sprint. Like there's no way in hell. Do not talk to me while I'm sprinting, right? So that would be vigorous intensity. Realistically, like we're just probably not gonna get to vigorous intensity in Pilates, and that's okay. right? Like, who needs it? You don't have to. But we can kind of shift a little bit more towards moderate intensity for certain populations under a given condition. So low intensity, you can talk easily, right? You can it's like having a walk, like you're just going on a casual walk with a cup of coffee or footwork, right? And then moderate intensity is a little bit labored, it's harder to talk, but you can do it. Whereas vigorous intensity, it's not happening. It is not happening, no conversation, okay? So that's the first part, because we need 150 minutes or 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity. Now the second part is two resistance training sessions. Now it's very common to be like, well, we do resistance training in Pilates, right? Because we do, right? Like there's resistance, right? There's spring tension. However, that's not what they're talking about, right? So they're talking about intensity, okay? So the intensity is that all, within the two resistance training sessions, what it means is every body part, like your calves, your hamstrings, your quads, your whatever, they all go to fatigue at least 2 times per week. Now, to fatigue means you went to near failure, which is not the same thing as burning, right? They're all super healthy, right? Burn the fuck out of my quads. Let's do it, okay? But it's not the same thing as failure, and it's just good to have the cognitive capacity to recognize the difference, and then we can play around with it. But there's not a hierarchy, right? So I'm not saying this is better than what you're doing. No. Let's just add on to what we're already doing, right? Or maybe you're already doing both of these. Cool. So if we were to take a muscle to failure, that means you can't do another one, right? So you have, you're doing single leg footwork on every spring imaginable, and you're banging it out, and at number 8, you can barely open the carriage, right? Number 9, how could you even do it, right? But you barely made it again. And then number 10, you only opened the carriage halfway. You couldn't go all the way out. That's taking a muscle to complete failure. Now, you don't have to go to failure. I just want to define it. Now, that would be taking a muscle to fatigue. Whereas if your muscle is burning, side lying legs, or no, actually let's do footwork. If you're doing footwork and you're just pulsing, you're pulsing forever, right? We are just pulsing forever in footwork, and it burns like shit. That is endurance, right? Which is super healthy. However, that's not what they're talking about with the resistance training. Okay, just in terms, and it's not to say that it's wrong. It's totally cool. Come to Athletic Reformer anytime. It will burn your quads. Okay, but when we're talking about activity guidelines, I just want to kind of define things clearly, and then that gives us a clear gauge on where do we go from here. So when we're talking about 2 resistance training sessions per week, we're talking about get muscles to near failure at least 2 times. And the reason for that is that we're building strength. That is about strength, because strength is a predictor for all-cause mortality. Meaning if you're stronger, you live longer, which is not the same thing as endurance. They're both super healthy, but we just can't put one in front of the other because we like one. They're not the same. What strength is the maximum force that you can apply onto an object at just one time. You can't do it twice, right? If it's twice, then it's not your maximum strength. So it's the maximum force that you can apply onto something one time. Endurance, we are freaking endurance specialists. You want to get good at endurance? Go do Pilates, right? Pilates is freaking awesome, okay? So what endurance is it is applying a submaximal force for an extended period of time. And you experience that by burning. We go through what's called glycolysis, which is one of our energy supplies, and we end up with a muscle burn. So this is you're doing your pulses, right? How do you make pulses harder? Do them longer, right? Just do more of them. It'll burn more as you do it more over time, right? Super, super healthy. However, endurance probably is a predictor for all-cause mortality as well. But what I'm homing in on, or what the guidelines are homing in on, is that strength is a predictor. Now, for example, we've found that if individuals engage in strength training, okay, they are 17% more likely to be alive in 10 years. relative to people that don't do it. And that's at any age, right? So if you're like 20 and you strength train, you're more likely to still be alive. If you are, I mean, you should be alive anyway. But then if you're 70 and you're strength training, 17% more alive. And that has nothing to do with cardio. You could be like, fuck cardio. Like, I'm not doing it. Right? I'm only strength training. That's it. Totally cool, right? You have an impact. However, if you do strength training and cardio, okay, you get your heart rate up, right, significantly. Okay, at least it's 64%. If you get the 64%, I think it's 64% heart rate max, then you're in moderate intensity exercise. Okay, don't worry about the numbers, right? You're just breathing kind of harder, right? If you do that for 150 minutes a week and you do strength training, you have a 40% more likely. You are 40% more likely to be alive in 10 years, and that doesn't matter at any age. Okay. That's why this is important, right? The number one thing that like we can do, or there's two like top things that we can do for people. One, we can improve the quantity of their life, meaning like we can extend the years of their life. And if we get them to meet the activity guidelines, which are a combination of strength and cardio, we can extend the amount of years that they live based on statistics for all-cause mortality. And then, of course, we can also improve the quality of their life because, I don't know, they can move, right? Maybe you move. Maybe you're able to live with less pain and things like that. And we're already doing that, like through Pilates. Like, we all work with people, right? They come in, sometimes they feel like crap, and then they leave, and it's like a whole new person, right? We're doing freaking awesome. And all I'm saying here is, like, if this is something newer, or if we're like, oh yeah, I don't really get them breathy, you can do even better, right? Because this is all about growing. Right, let's continue to grow individually. Let's continue to grow as a community, and this is just something that I would like to put on the table as a place for growth. And in another, like, just throwing another stat at you, like especially with older populations, because those that do like clinical Pilates, like that, I think that's more like Australia, and then in terms of the term, or people that just work like one-on-one with people, they tend to be like older because they can afford it. And the older populations are less likely to be in a group scenario because they're not showing up at 7 a.m. for like Pilates, right? Like I am. I probably would, right? But so anyways, so usually like one-on-one, they tend to be a little bit older, but not always. And within that population, okay, walking speed is a predictor for all-cause mortality, meaning if your client comes in and they just walk really slow, right? Just on that alone, that predicts if they'll be alive in 5 years. I think it was 5 years. Okay, it's called How Fast Does the Grim Reaper Walk? That's a study. And with that, people that walk faster are more likely to be alive in 5 years. Now, who do you think is going to walk faster? People that have leg strength or people that don't have leg strength? Who do you think is going to walk faster? Someone who has aerobic capacity, meaning their cardiovascular system's up to speed, or someone who has decreased aerobic capacity? Right? So strength and cardio are predictors, but also just in terms of activity, walking speed is really, really helpful. So if you notice that you have a client that kind of walks slower, like you don't just tell them to like walk fast. Like that's now you're increasing fall risk, right? Don't do that. But check out their lower extremity strength, right? Like that could be somewhere that you could really have an impact on them. And the awesome part about strength training just in general, or strength building in Pilates, two things. One, there are no non-responders. There's no human known to science that does not get stronger from strength training. However, there are people that do strength training and don't get stronger. But it's not because the strength training doesn't work, it's because we don't have the right volume, or we don't have enough strength training for that person to get stronger. So if you can find the right amount of exercise for an individual to get stronger, they will get stronger. There is no human known to science who does not get stronger from strength training. Okay? It's reliable as anything else in your life. And that's where I pose the question of do we do this in Pilates? Do we actually follow protocols known to science that build strength? And that answer could be yes, and that answer could be no, and there's zero judgment on that. And I'm just here to put things on the table as an offering to say, hey, if this is new, this is really valuable information because this was new to me at some point and I didn't learn it in Pilates school. And that's nothing bad on my Pilates school. I mean, Pilates school was awesome. Look where I am, right? They're a part of that journey. But as life goes on, we just learn from different camps. And my experience was I didn't learn this in Pilates school, but I apply it to every person that I teach movement to, Pilates, or if I'm doing physical therapy, if I were doing a personal training session, I would absolutely be applying this, okay? The first thing to recognize is that burning is not a sign of getting stronger. Burning is a sign of burning. Burning is through a short-term energy supply, or it's like short to moderate term energy supply called glycolysis. Okay, so our strength training doesn't require us to burn, right? When we're building strength. Okay, building strength and building muscle is not the same thing. Okay, muscle is hypertrophy. You can build hypertrophy or build muscle mass at any rep range. I'm not talking about that. I love hypertrophy though. Sign me up for some hypertrophy. I could use more. But when we're talking about strength, okay, general rule of thumb is we want to keep the load high so your reps are low, right? Your repetitions are underneath 10. Okay, even like 6 is even better, but it's really hard to achieve in Pilates. But we're going to keep the repetitions really low, and that's a result of your load being really high. Okay? Now, what's also important to recognize is that you can get just as strong with like elastic bands or springs as you can with weights. And they've done a systematic review on, I believe they measured tubing and they measured thorobands, and then they compared it to weights. Okay? And they found no difference. But the thing that holds them equal is intensity. So it has to be, like you can stretch that to springs, right? You can take the concept and apply it to Pilates. You have to have enough load on your springs to where your clients cannot do more than 10 of an exercise. Here's an example. So one-legged footwork, right? We want to build quadricep strength. Let's say it's like, oh yeah, like Susan walks kind of slow, so we're going to build up your leg strength, right? So instead of doing like 5 different rounds of footwork that accumulates like 50 repetitions, okay, that's way too many. Like it's healthy, super, super healthy, but it's not going to build strength. It's going to build endurance, right? Which is good. Now she has more endurance. But if you want to like really bias strength, okay, go ahead and put on like as many springs as possible, if not all of them, and have them do it on one leg. Okay? And so the result that we're looking for is that you press out and in, press out and in. And at first you're gonna be like just fine, but around like repetition 7, we're gonna see the carriage slow down a little bit, right? And right when we see the carriage slow down, we know that they only have a couple of repetitions left, yeah? Because they can't move like they were before, they're getting fatigued. Now, you don't have to take your clients to failure, although you can, like do it at first, but like when you're building someone's strength, you can actually stop like 2 repetitions prior to failure and you get just as many strength gains. There's like a huge asterisk on that. So like failure means you cannot do another repetition, and 2 repetitions to failure means 2 repetitions before you can't do another one. That's when you stop. And you can recognize that through like a significant decrease in speed, okay? Meaning like the carriage is moving like a turtle. And you know what happens? Oh, the form, it's gonna go to shit. Like they're gonna have shaky leg, their knee's gonna go like valgus or varus. And I encourage you not to really care that much. Because you don't get, like, we'll do mechanism of injury in another conversation, but your client is not going to get hurt because their alignment's off. Okay, that's an aesthetic belief, right? That's not an actual belief supported by science or by any kind of functional capacity. So you're going to notice like your client's form getting kind of shitty, right? I mean, it's going to be an alternative form, right? I'll be nicer. So it's like, it's going to be like alternative, the knee's going to do weird things, and they're going to make like weird facial expressions, right? That's a good sign, okay? And they're going to go a little bit slower. So you can continue to have them go, okay, until they're like really close to failure. That's all you got to do, Okay? If you do that for each body part at least 2 times a week, you'll get your clients to meet part of the criteria for activity guidelines. Okay, so that is in regards to building strength. Okay, now this doesn't mean that you need to, like, we're doing it wrong, right? No, you're not. You're helping people. Okay? You that's listening, you are helping people, and I just want to add another tool to your toolbox to help more people, right? And so if you were to add some strength to a Pilates class or private session, you don't need to do it the whole time. Like if you just do like little bouts of strength, like a small set at the beginning, a set in the middle, and then a set at the end, you got 3 sets of strength in your class. And then you can still do all of the Pilates things. Okay? So it's just like an opportunity that you can have. Another thing that is important in regards to meeting activity guidelines with people that come and do Pilates is the aerobic part, right? Like how can we get people breathy? Now, you could also like just have people do this outside of the studio, right? Like encourage them to go walking like faster, or, you know, jump on the treadmill at the gym, go running, like whatever it is, right? But sometimes people don't get that outside of Pilates, or that they're not interested. So it's in our best interest to do it in Pilates. One thing is like if your client's wearing a smart watch, they have a heart rate monitor on there. Okay, you can easily check what their max heart rate is. It's 220 minus their age. 220 minus their age. It's gonna give you like a good enough range of what their heart rate max is. It might be off by like 5 or 10 beats because there's a more complicated formula, but it's not. You don't really need to do it. 220 minus their age. Okay, for me, like I'm 34 years old, 220 minus my age, oh no, I have to do math, is like 186, right? I think I did that right, yeah, 186. So that would be my max heart rate. Now, if you're gonna get someone to moderate intensity exercise, you just need to get them at least 64%. Okay, 64%. If you do that, okay, that's from the CDC. If you do that, you just do their max heart rate times 0.64. Boom, you have their max heart rate. Then as you're doing your exercises, right, check the heart rate. After you do a long stretch and they need a moment, like check the heart rate. Did you get them up high enough? Okay, it's a lot easier to do in like a one-on-one session, okay? And if that doesn't work, like you don't have a heart rate monitor, go ahead and use the talk test, right? How often are they breathy in your classes, okay? And can you get them a little bit more breathy? Okay, like what would you have to do? And then there's a lot of answers to that. But what I can tell you is that laying down on your back isn't gonna do it. Even jump board. And I'm not here to shit on jump board, right? But it's not your best choice for cardio. And if you don't believe me, try this out. Try this out. Okay, I'm not saying it doesn't do any cardio. I'm saying it's not your best choice. Your best choice is to do activities where your feet are on the floor and you're upright, and do as many of them as possible. So you can do this quick experiment anytime you're in a studio. Go ahead and set a timer for 1 minute and do your normal jump board setting. Do it for 1 minute. Check your heart rate before and after. Then I want you to stand next to your reformer and do jump squats for 1 minute. Check your heart rate before and after. And I guarantee that your heart rate will be way higher if you're vertical and you're doing the jumping. So it doesn't mean jump board's bad, right? Go jump board, like do it. But if your aim is to get cardiovascular fitness, you keep your students upright because you're gonna get more out of that activity. Which doesn't mean don't do jump board, like go do jump board. And then after that, like get them upright and like go do some squats and lunges and things like that. But at the end of the day, there is a ton of value in one, knowing the physical activity guidelines and getting people to meet them. The physical activity guidelines are 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise plus 2 resistance training sessions per week. And there are countless personal trainers, physiotherapists, exercise physiologists, and etc. that do not know the exercise guidelines, and less than 10% of the general population knows the activity guidelines. And how the hell are you going to meet activity guidelines if you don't even know them? Which is why someone like you popping this into your ears is incredibly valuable, because you can make a difference in someone's life and you can help them not only become aware of activity guidelines, but also achieve them, so then they get to become part of the population that has an extended quantity and quality of life simply because they met activity guidelines. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Evidence-Based Pilates podcast. It was absolutely awesome to hang out with you. Reach out to me anytime, okay? The links for the research is there in the show notes. You can also follow me on Instagram and reach out to me anytime. Have an incredible rest of your day.